Shall I begin? Okay. All right. So when Max was in second grade, he stopped in the middle of the street as I was taking him to school, and he said, "Is there some reason you're not giving me hammer dulcimer lessons?" And we had introduced him to the instrument at a folk festival when he was about 6. He fell in love with it. So after that pronouncement, we got him lessons. He studied with Kat Eggleston, who is a brilliant singer-songwriter and phenomenal hammer dulcimer player, actually here in Evanston. He ended up cutting his first CD on Southport Records when he was 16. He studied music at Bard College, where he was introduced to both microtonality and to the music of Senegal, where he traveled and studied with the Sissoko family of traditional musicians. But he found his true inspiration, I think you can agree with this, Max, in India, on a grant from the American Institute of Indian Studies, where he studied with Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, the great Santur master. Max has recorded 9 CDs to date. I think that's right, Max? I'm hoping. Both with his band House of Waters and also with a new solo album that's coming out soon. He's taken the hammer dulcimer into entirely new directions, infusing many cultural traditions. He's also been involved in redesigning and physically building the instrument with a master craftsman in rural Oklahoma, so he truly knows the hammer dulcimer from the inside out. Priya Darshini was born in Chennai and raised in Mumbai. Her grandmother was an accomplished, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, Bharatanatyam dancer and a classical vocalist. She started studying Carnatic classical music when she was 4, although her main training is in Hindustani classical and jazz. Whether she's singing in Aramaic or Hebrew with this fabulous Middle Eastern group called the Epi Chorus, or in Hindi or Tamil or English in her Grammy-nominated album Periphery, Priya lives a cross-cultural collaboration, pulling from many sources to make a unique sound. And we are especially appreciative of her cross-cultural collaboration by marrying our son. So
I was hoping you were going to say something like that.
Keep it pro. Keep it pro. All right.
Okay. All right. Priya has sung in Bollywood films. She's traveled with Roy Wooten's Black Mozart Ensemble. She's appeared in The Letters, a Hollywood film about Mother Teresa. She was the first Indian woman to complete the 100-mile Himalayan ultra marathon. And then she later formed a company called the Wind Chasers, organizing ultra marathons in the Himalayas on the border between India and Nepal. She's been featured in Rolling Stone magazine, Vogue India, and she recently wrote an op-ed in Variety about the complex honor of her Grammy nomination. She is also deeply involved in her family's NGO, Jana Rachita, that provides assistance for children struggling with cancer, that builds schools for tribal groups, and most recently is trying to do what they can to assess the very dire COVID situation in India. So we are in love with these people and present them to you.
जहाँ से जुबां शुरू हुई, जहाँ पर लफ्ज़ हुए ख़त्म, जहाँ से जुबां शुरू हुई, जहाँ पर लफ्ज़ हुए ख़त्म, जहाँ कहने से सुना ज़्यादा अहम हो, रहम करम, रहम करम, रहम करम। No. जहाँ से जुबां शुरू हुई, जहाँ पर लफ्ज हुए खत्म, जहाँ बसा है मेरा घर, वहाँ तक हो मेरी उसी आसमां पर अब मैं चलूंगी, उन बादलों के संग अब मैं गलूंगी। यहाँ से जहाँ तक how's the sound where you are? Is the balance okay? The dulcimer and voice and all that? Okay, that's great. We can't hear you, Barbara.
It's perfect.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, go on.
That was it.
Okay. Well, so that song you just heard is called Jahan, and that song was on my recent record Periphery. And Jahan, for this song, I collaborated with a very dear friend of mine from Kolkata. His name is Devashish Makhija. We wrote the lyrics together, and then my band composed music to this tune, to this piece. Um, anyway, okay, I want to welcome all of you again one more time, and thanks for being interested in our story, in our music. And We're going to take you on a little journey and give you a little insight into who we are and, what our journey has been so far and how that has informed our sound and how we take what all the experiences we've had and bring it into our music. And hopefully that's interesting to you.
And
So I was born in Chennai, like Dad was mentioning earlier, and but I grew up in Mumbai. My parents grew up in Chennai their whole lives, but when I was a baby, I think 2 or 3 years old, we came to Mumbai, and from then on, I grew up there. And as a child, I started studying Carnatic classical music when I was 4 years old. It wasn't a choice. It's just what we did. Like how you have piano lessons and, ballet. And for us, it was, for girls, it was Bharatnatyam lessons and, or violin and voice. And for boys, it was mridangam, which is a South Indian percussive instrument. Um, but mostly it was just to be able to understand music and have that be something that could bring you comfort throughout your life and hopefully have that be a lens through which you understand life. Um, but I fell in love with music when I was very young. I don't think there was ever a time in my life where I didn't think I was going to be doing music. It was a very natural thing for me. My entire family, my parents, my grandparents on both sides, they've all studied music. Again, in the same way as I was just mentioning earlier, it was a cultural thing. And but my grandmother on my mother's side was a very accomplished Carnatic classical singer as well as a Bharatanatyam dancer. And I got my name from her when the government gave her a title for excelling in dance. And the title was Natyaveli Chandrika Priyadarshini. So Priyadarshini was a title, and I just took it without doing anything for it. So it was free for me. Um, so that's how I got my name. Anyway, so as a child, my first teacher was my mother, and I also studied with my grandmother. And then eventually, over time, I started studying with Lakshmi Rajgopalan, who was part of the Matunga sisters in Mumbai. And at the time, to have access to a lot of Carnatic classical musicians for teaching was not, there weren't too many options. So I continued studying with my grandmother and my mother, as well as Lakshmi Rajgopalan. And what happened was quite interesting because this is where the subcultural aspect of being a Tamilian South Indian growing up in Mumbai starts to show up. So I'm growing up in Mumbai, I was Tamilian at home, but when I was outside, I'm in Mumbai, so I'm speaking Hindi, Marathi, which is the state language, and of course English, which is which was the language that our colonizers left us, and everybody was speaking in English, and the medium of instruction in schools also was in English. And as a child, it's quite interesting that I was a little embarrassed about studying Carnatic classical music because even within India, it was like, oh, you're Southie and oh, you're Madrasi. So I wouldn't go out and tell my friends that I'm studying Carnatic music. There was a little bit of um, maybe an embarrassment, which I am now embarrassed to even say that I was embarrassed. But thank God I'm older and wiser now, but hopefully wiser. But yeah, at the time, I wouldn't go out and tell people that I was studying Carnatic music. Um, but probably owing to that, as well as owing to just the fact that um, I didn't have an immersive musical culture that I was around for Carnatic classical music, that I started to foray into all these other styles of music. I was also a very curious kid. I dreamt of traveling the world, and I was very curious about music from around the world, and what and how people lived in other parts of the world, what they ate, what they looked like. And as we grew up in a very lower middle class um, lifestyle, and I didn't really have access to any of this at the time. So my way of learning about different cultures was through music. And so I would ask anyone I knew who was traveling to bring me back cassettes and tapes um, from their travels, and everyone would oblige. And that's how I started listening to music from around the world and learning about cultures from around the world. And my interest in just what was out there sparked. That's the time it sparked. And around when I was 11 or 12, I started listening to a lot of rock music and metal and, from the MTV Channel V days. And so that's what we were being exposed to at the time. So I was more intent on trying to tell my friends I'm cool. So look, I'm part of metal bands and rock bands. So I was this cool kid being, outside performing in metal and rock bands while I'd come back home and, go back to studying Carnatic classical music, So I was living that dual life for a long time and pretending to be cool outside and like, at home studying Carnatic music. And all this time, I was still looking for a, a good foundation in music. I knew this for a fact that I knew I needed a strong foundation in any music that I chose to study. And this is something that my family also continued to push me. They said, if you're not interested in Carnatic, that's fine, but you need a foundation, a lens through which you can understand any style of music. And I'm really glad that they pushed me to do that because eventually, as I started looking for different teachers, I found myself gravitating towards Hindustani classical music, which is the North Indian style of music, North Indian style of classical music in India. So I started gravitating towards that, and there were a lot of incredible teachers in Mumbai available to me. So I tried several different teachers, and then eventually, over time, later on, found my guru, who I'm still studying with. It's been about 17 years that I've been studying with him, and I study with him every single week, even now. So eventually, Hindustani classical became my foundation. Now, in my teens, again, I was also beginning to listen to music from around the world, and I discovered Ella Fitzgerald and Miles Davis, and something about that just completely changed my world. The first time I heard Ella Fitzgerald, I cried and laughed ecstatically at the same time. I couldn't understand what I was listening to, but it moved me so deeply. I still have goosebumps as I talk about it because it's something about just her freedom and her, like, there was so much. I could hear the repression, but I could also sense the freedom in her expression of her repression, which is something that moved me very deeply. And there was one performance in particular that I saw of hers that um, made me decide that I'm going to travel to America and learn jazz. I'm going to learn this music. It was one of her live performances at Berlin when she was singing this one piece and she forgot the lyrics to the song while she was singing, and she actually, before singing, she said, I might forget the lyrics. And then as she starts singing, she makes up lyrics on the spot. And the song was even more beautiful as she started making up lyrics on the spot. And the just her bravery, something about how brave she was, and the agency that she had when she was performing. It was exactly what me as a 16-year-old, lost, insecure child, teenager, needed to hear and have as a mentor. So that's how I discovered jazz and started trying to. My early study of jazz was imitation, so I would just try and imitate Ella Fitzgerald to the T. Like every single sound she made, I would try and make. And on the parallel, I was also studying Hindustani classical music. So at that time, these worlds were very separate for me. It was like this is Priya singing Ella, and then this is or jazz and listening to Miles Davis and writing down all the Miles Davis solos and trying to understand that. But and also this was Priya going back home and practicing Hindustani classical music. So there were cultures were completely separate for me at the time. Um, Now, on parallelly, I was also beginning to try and find um, try and find my way through um, you know a professional and professional life as a musician. So I was looking at different opportunities, and at the time in India, the independent music industry was not very developed as it is now. Now it is really, really blown up. It's massive. But at the time, independent music industry was very small. If you wanted to be a professional musician, you had to be either a classical singer, pure classical singer, which you may or may not know, it takes 50 to 60 years before you can get scratch the surface at being good at this music. and or else you had to be singing in movies, so I got my first opportunity to sing to do a voiceover and a TV commercial when I was 16, and I was working at this production house in film at the time. And I got this opportunity to sing a jingle. And so my career kind of started off with singing TV commercial jingles and doing voiceovers, and then slowly I started getting offers to sing in Bollywood movies, and I took them, um, even though I didn't feel like that was for me. And I continued doing it because there was no other option, and this was an amazing opportunity, and I felt people would keep telling me, "Oh, once you get famous, once you get successful, then you can do whatever you want." But my heart was not in it. There was something about that music, or just that world, that I just didn't feel like I belonged there. Um, Now I know that it had everything to do with agency, and me just showing up at a studio and being told exactly what to sing, how to sing, and also just how the film world functions. There's no set system, and I didn't have a background for even knowing how to navigate that world at the time and be safe while I was doing it. So I always had one foot out the door, even as I was pursuing film. And what happened around, I think this was 2007. This was actually a really beautiful time for me. It was a very important time in my life when um, I, I I started to explore a richer internal life. One was by trying to run ultra marathons and running a 100-mile race in the Himalayas, and then, trying to find my purpose. And, that I was just questioning, I was deeply questioning my existence and why I'm here and what is my purpose and what can I do. I was feeling so stifled, and yet this was supposed to be the most amazing thing as a musician that I could have had in Mumbai, and I didn't want to be ungrateful about it, but I was still feeling not good about it. And while I was about to sign a big contract with a record label who was going to sign me for 3 years, and I would be tied to performing 150 to 200 concerts a year, and it would pay really well, and they were going to make me a star and tell me what to wear and who to speak with, and like how they make pop stars. And while I was almost about to sign a contract like that, something incredible happened. I think the universe just heard heard my struggle and um, this I remember this so clearly. On the Monday morning, I was supposed to go and sign this contract. I'd agreed on all the terms and everything, and but I was so depressed, and I couldn't understand why I was depressed. And on that Saturday, I get a phone call from someone called Future Man Roy Wooten. He's part of the Wooten Brothers, and they live in Nashville. And the Wooten Brothers are really very respected musicians, and they were part of this band called Bella Fleck and the Flecktones at the time. And I'm a huge fan of Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. And it was like if I ever saw them live, if I saw them perform live once, that it would be the biggest thing in my life. And suddenly this person is calling me, and I couldn't like it just didn't compute. My jaw fell to the floor, and I was like, "Why is he calling me? What is going on?" And my running partner at the time knew him, and my running partner was creating a music software, and that's how he knew them. And apparently, Roy Wooten was looking to collaborate with a musician in India while he was touring in India, and he had just invented an instrument called the Royale, which is piano, but based on the golden ratios, he had created new notes that were sort of in between, full whole steps or half steps. They were, microtones. So he had invented this instrument, and he was now composing Western classical music using this instrument. And he wanted to collaborate with an artist who was able to improvise uh, on these pieces, on these written compositions, but in these and understanding these cool notes that were existing in between the notes that the common person is used to hearing. And he reached out to me about it, and we had a long conversation, and I sang something on the phone, and yeah, and then we
Gosh.
talked about Vedic math. We talked about bringing math and how geometry and math, and and how nature plays such a big part in music. And he said, "This is it. I'd love to collaborate and tour with you. We don't have much money at all, but it would just be great." And I was like, "Yes, no money and a lot of education. This is perfect." So I did a no-show the next Monday, the following Monday at the contract, and just I didn't go. And instead decided to. I took this as a as a calling, and I took this as a message from the universe to change my path. And um, I went on tour with Future Man and with 10 or 12 other musicians, and we played at the most random places in Karnataka and all over the. We just get on a bus and stop at random places and just set up and perform for villagers who are just like who are these people? What are they doing? We don't understand, but this is great, So, that was how I sort of got away from the film world, and right after that, he invited me to come back to Nashville and compose and write more music with him. And that was when I came to Nashville in 2008, um, and started playing with the Wooten Brothers, and just sort of my life changed a lot then, because the the box that I was in earlier did not exist anymore, and there was no box, and I was now able to see and perceive and experience music in a way that I never had. And another beautiful thing happened is that once I came here, everyone started asking me about, oh my God, Carnatic classical music, Hindustani classical music. This is such interesting, incredible music. And please tell me more about what you're studying. And so many people that I would meet here, including Roy Wooten and all the Wooten brothers and Bella Fleck, they were all like, we're dying to go to India to study this music and play with Indian musicians, because this is such intellectually stimulating music, number one, but also it just moves us so deeply. And I started to realize, the beauty in my own culture and the beauty in the music that I had been studying. And somewhere deep down, I must have known, which is why I continued studying it and never stopped. And finally, I was able to understand why I stuck with it and why it was going to be such an important tool for me. And what happened later was I started to immerse myself in these so many different styles, from bluegrass to jazz to, just being thrown into a world of so many different styles of music. And Indian classical music became the lens and the grammar through which I would understand all these styles of music. And slowly, all of it started to make sense. It wasn't so separate anymore. I was able to slowly find a way to understand how they're not different at all. It's just the stories of how the language might be different, but it really, the feeling is the same. It is all just, it's just one music in a way. And that realization just really shifted how I started to study music, how I started to write music, and how even my performance completely changed. And so for those 3 years that I was in Nashville, we created a very big body of music, and then I went back to India, and then eventually 2013. By 2013, I had built enough of I had to build my resume so I could then apply for a visa, and then move to New York. So in 2013, I finally moved to New York, and that again was a long-standing dream for me to be able to live in New York and to work with musicians from every style of music from every part of the world. And just, that has been education. That has been some of the most incredible education I've had. I've played with musicians who play Macedonian styles, jazz, Syrian music. I'm singing in Hebrew, Aramaic. I'm learning microtonal music, pop, hip hop, rap. Everything started becoming a part of my life, and through it all, my Indian classical music just got became stronger and stronger, and the foundation became deeper for me, and that became a lens through which I was now able to find um, a pathway to understand all these many styles and bring them into who I've now become. And today I have so many of these different cultures that now live within me, and my music is now able to access all of these cultures in a way that is authentic, without me trying too hard to put it in a specific category. It just comes from me, and I have all of these identities. So that's how my music itself is now beginning to sound unique, yet something that reflects who I am in all its authenticity. I'll talk a little bit more about all this later. I do a few other things as well. I work with a wildlife organization and sports and film and nonprofit work, as Dad mentioned. But I think I'm going to try and stick to music. But if you are interested in knowing more about that work, please feel free to ask me when we throw this open to questions. Um, I'd like to play a song for you called "Loneliest Star." And this is again from this last album that I just released called Periphery. Loneliest star, shining so brightly for no one to see. Loneliest star, loneliest star, what keeps you going day after day, day after day? Loneliest star, tell me your secret. You shouldn't keep it. Loneliest star. star, shining so brightly for no one to see. Lonely star, loneliest star, tell me your secret. You shouldn't keep it. Loneliest star. Oh, thank you. So that last song is called "Loneliest Star," and um, it was inspired by this star that I discovered many years ago. This star called CX330 that sits right at the edge of our galaxy, and apparently it is a very young star, but one of the brightest stars in the galaxy. And just something about how it's going through a growth spurt, and it's constantly just like wanting to explode and like give out so much light, and it's so bright, but it's so alone and with not a single star light years around it. Something about that story just really moved me, and as I started reading more and more about the star, I just started seeing that star in people around me. And so yeah, so that song is about that star and every person that I see that star in. That's all of you, actually. I'm going to now hand this over to Max.
Hey everyone, you can hear me fine? Great. Um, so, like my dad had said, I started playing this instrument, the dulcimer, at a very, very early age, mostly in the folk and Celtic community and in that style, which is basically how it's mostly used in the United States, as well as in Canada and the UK. Um, but when I was about 19, I got really interested in music from Senegal in West Africa. This instrument called the kora, with a gourd that a pola comes out. You pluck it like this with these four fingers. It's like a lateral harp. It's a predecessor to the harp. And so I got really interested in that music, and so went out there to study with the Sissoko family. They're a social caste of people called the griot, Griot. They're the history keepers, the medicine men, the dancers, the musicians, the poets, the people that are kind of like the cultural ambassadors of West Africa. It's mostly you'll find it in West Africa. There are other griot cultures throughout the continent, but most of the time you'll see it in West Africa. And the Sissoko family is one of the last families left of that tradition. So I'm grateful to be able to have studied with them. After going back and forth over a period of about 5 years, I went to New York, and that's kind of really where I settled, learning as much as I can from the New York music scene, which is just as much from college, if not more. College was fantastic, but education comes in many different forms, and at school, it was a lot of just like technical aspects, learning how to read, learning how to understand harmony and theory and stuff, but no one really understood what to do with this instrument, even at a open-minded school like Bard. But once getting to New York, it really expanded my opportunity for study and for people to take this in and and then have this be an acceptable instrument in the fields that I'm trying to resonate in. And so eventually, I found myself attracted to music from India, specifically Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma. He's kind of the doyen of this style. He's the pioneer of the instrument. The instrument, pretty much before him, was considered a Kashmiri folk instrument, the santur. And he's from Jammu, which is the state in the north of India, and he brought it into like the mainstay of Indian classical music. If we were to give an analogy, you gave Bela Fleck as an example earlier. Bela Fleck completely and totally revolutionized the perception of the banjo. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that, except now, if we're going to give the same analogy, it'd be like if every Western orchestra had a banjo now. So that's kind of what his role was in Indian classical music. Santur is synonymous with Indian classical music at this point, whereas even 60 years ago it was some folk instrument. Um, so I'm very, very grateful to have had the opportunity to study with him, and I got a grant through the American Institute of Indian Studies, which is based out of Chicago at the U of C. And so I turned a 9-month grant into 2 years because I think I was 24. So instead of having a proper apartment, it was the tiny, tiny little thing I could possibly find for as cheap as possible to extend my trip. Squat, toilet, bucket shower, all the things, and just make it as cheap as possible so I can study as much as I can with this guy. And it was really a game changing experience. We're going to talk more about some of the philosophical aspects and even technical aspects of Indian classical music a little bit later. But that really was a life changing experience beyond music. Eventually, also allowed me to meet Priya, which was pretty good, if I have to say. We actually met at a party while she was living in Nashville. She was visiting home while I was living in Mumbai. So it was a very funny thing. I was in Mumbai studying Indian classical music, and she was in Nashville working on Americana, and then she just happened to be visiting home. So it's a nice little, we like to say that Priya went west to find perspective, and I went east to find perspective on music, and then apply that into my own and into our own music. So it's a fun little opposite story in our story, but it definitely works. So that's basically what my upbringing has been musically. I've then come back to the U.S. and do a ton of music here, touring around. I have a group called House of Waters, and that's where we use our own compositions and our own music and to make into this new different type of style. It's a trio with a bass player and a drummer. There's 5 passports technically on stage between the 3 of us, so there's a lot of international influence for sure. The bass player's from Japan, the drummer's from Argentina. So that kind of understanding of the value of these different cultures, bringing it into kind of one place, has become a major part of my music, and it's something that we like to do in our collaboration as well. That last piece, had this kind of feeling of Indian classical music, especially in that second section. But there's so many of these like really interesting Western harmonic changes that are happening, Western classical harmonic changes that are happening underneath in that A section. So it's a really nice little mixture of stuff that we like to do as much as possible. So that's really it. I've been playing the instrument since I was a kid, like I said, and I've been building them since '07, and really got into understanding the ins and outs of the instrument so that I can fix it if needed, or modify for tuning stability and for allow for chromaticism. But this is really what I try to do with my music and get it into be as personal as possible. Sometimes I need to change some things for that. So that's why I've been doing that. And I think actually now would be a great time. I just did a new record, first solo CD in 16 years. So that's crazy. It's been that long. And I'm really actually quite proud of it. I'm rarely proud of a project that I've finished, but I'm actually proud of it, which is nice. It actually came from, it was deeply inspired by this past year. This year has been obviously very, very tough for everybody. Everybody in this Zoom, let alone the world. And we started. There's just been so much loss and suffering from people in our community, and especially if we're talking about India. It's still pretty devastating what's going on currently. And so Priya and I started over the past, I guess, like 6 months, really started sending our music to people, just because that's all we could do. We were either in New York or in Chicago, and we were just seeing our community suffer, like immeasurable suffering, and often people passing away, or family members of theirs passing away, or our own family members passing away. And so we started to realize that all that we could give at that moment, because we can't be there for that person, physically that was just not a thing that we could do because of COVID. We started sending our music. Like, hey, does this help? I some of the difficulties that happen in the suffering that's happening now during COVID is that they're doing it alone. And if we can say, hey, you're not alone, you're not suffering on your own, that no one can see you. We can see that you're going through this, and I recognize that. I'm deeply sorry. Can this help? That's what we started to do. We started sending our music to people. And really, it was pretty wild seeing how like the impact of it, how effective it has been for people's own healing. And that's becoming more and more of, I guess, our focus now with our music and our careers. Is it's like this is something that's really, uh, if nothing else, very effective. I mean, whether it's needed or not, it's a different question. But it's definitely when we do give it, we see the impact of what it is, and it's way more effective than I could possibly have imagined. And so we started realizing that this is something we want to do, and I wanted to make a record of just that. And so I started just recording only the dulcimer without even layers, just solo instrument. I just basically we've been doing a ton of different recordings over the past year and film scores and all this. And so we were like, okay, when we're done at the end of the day, let's just press record for 10 more minutes and send that. And we were seeing what that would do, and so we said, okay, I'm going to make this a record. And so I started just doing a solo record, no layers, no nothing, just this isolated sound. And that's what the record is, and I'm quite happy about it. And actually, I guess just 2 days ago, I just got signed by a label for it. I was not planning. I was just planning on doing it. Yeah, it's pretty great. I was just planning on putting it out independently. But then I shared it with a pretty well-known musician who was like, hey, this is actually quite good. We should do something with this. And then 2 days later, on a separate connection, this guy came through and said, hey, I run this label. It's this wonderful label that we've known for many, many years. And can we, put it out? So that's what it's been. Yeah, that's the story of the label, or of this album right now. Oh yeah, we're running out of battery power, so we might have a little difficulty actually, Priya, because yeah, 1 second. There's some technical issue with that actually though. All right, we'll deal with that in a second. Don't forget it's only 2 ports. Our sound might cut out for 30 seconds later. I'll tell you that. We'll fix that in a minute. But anyway, if you can, I think now is the right time to put on the video. We decided, I was talking to my sister Emma, and see if she could make a video for a little trailer for the album. So this is a 1 minute video that Emma made. And I think, Barbara, if you double click it, open it, unmute yourself, share screen, should work.
And I'm sharing screen. And I've got disc. Here we go. Which one?
Not the YouTube one.
All right, then let me get over to
Titled In It.
Huh?
Its title is In It.
Right, but that's on another screen. So let me try to bear with me.
Double click it, it should work.
Double click what?
The video file.
I'm not seeing it. Let me try this my way, and then I'll try it your way.
Okay.
One will work.
And give me 10 seconds as I'm going to fix this power situation. Give me 10 seconds.
Yep. Oh dear. I'm not finding a way out. Because what I'm trying to do is get to my mail from you, which I had, but I don't know how to make the screen smaller to get to that.
Okay,
Any
here's
ideas?
what we plan. I'm gonna get the video up on my computer, and then I'll share the screen from there.
Fabulous.
Okay. 1 second.
Wonderful.
And give us 10 seconds. We have to do something with a little adapter thing. 10 seconds.
Okay, and I'm going to
Sorry
get
for that.
some water.
Perfect. Water break. Water break.
Isn't there another one on this side?
Just no, stop. Yeah. Just 1 second though. That's not gonna work. Shit. What I need you to do
Yes.
is underneath this, take the box out. In the box is another cable, black cable. Open it with the regular way, not that side. Black cable, take it out, put the box back. Can you plug that in to the unit?
Finding you, Max, if you are.
Right unit. There, right?
Yeah, dude.
I did
What is
this.
this?
This is the one you just gave me.
Yeah, what is this?
That was there.
Okay, yeah, get rid of that. That's fine.
Can I go sit down?
Go sit down.
Do you need me?
No. Can you ask if everybody can hear and see fine now? Just unmute.
Yeah, you've been unmuted the whole time.
Hey, can you hear us? No, not yet, Max. This is not on.
We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
You've been unmuted the
We're
entire
back.
time.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. We're on our mobile setup.
This is wonderful. I suspect I'm speaking for everyone by saying we'll wait as long as it takes happily. No worry.
Thank you. Barbara, we're waiting for permission from you to so you can let us share our screen.
What am I doing? Share screen?
You have to give us the permission to share screen.
Okay. Oh, look what I found.
Oh, you found your own share screen. That's perfect. So now you can share the screen yourself.
So what am I doing?
So what you can do next is open up that video file called init. Not that one. You have it in your, you probably have it downloaded.
Well, I've got the YouTube.
No, not the YouTube link. You had a file that was downloaded. It's probably.
I've got four things on this. I've got you. I've got Max.
So that first link you see, right? The WeTransfer link. The very first link. If you have already gone to that link and downloaded the file, then you can play it from there. If you haven't done that before, then don't worry about it. We'll just move on to the next section. Yeah, if you haven't downloaded it before, don't worry about it. We'll actually just.
Okay.
You're downloading it now. Amazing.
I'm finding it amazing.
The beautiful thing about this past year, and there's something that I do not want to get rid of from this past year, is that as artists, when we perform on stage, everything has to be so perfect, and there's no room for human error.
Right.
But this past year, it's been so nice. There's so much understanding.
Of inaptitude. And
That is,
some of us at a certain age are surprising ourselves
yes.
at what we're learning. I don't know if this file.
Yeah, so now it's in your download folder. So open up your
Okay.
downloads. I think you've already downloaded this before, but you did it again, so we're here.
So you can go to your download folder and you should find it there.
All right. What does my download folder look like?
Why don't you click on Finder on the left?
The first icon on that same row on the left side, all the way to the left. If you click on that,
And then go to
yes.
Downloads
Now on the left side, if you go to what says download.
Okay. My God.
Now double click that. WeTransfer.
I'm not finding. Wait.
You can do it this way,
So
or
you see the WeTransfer?
Yeah, but
That folder, you can double click on the WeTransfer folder.
It's November 29th, 2020, so it's not
That's
you.
an old one. Okay.
What about the one that was from? Can you do it by date, maybe?
What should I call it?
Never mind. Let's move on. We're not gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on. We can probably just attach it to an email later and send it out.
Okay.
It's a really beautiful stop motion animation video that Emma.
Oh, how fabulous.
Emma made. So it's it's a really wonderful family collaboration. We really love that we have so many artists in the family that we can collaborate with each other. So she made a video for Max's song as a promo, and she's going to make a larger music video for it. So we'll just send it to you later. So for now, you could just go back to the original screen, and at some point, you'll have to do the share screen again and go to that YouTube link that you have.
All right.
just
So I
leave that
stop
open.
share at the moment?
Yes, just for the moment. Yeah,
Okay.
you're good now. So, nice
I
job.
mean,
so
this
far.
is literally having an old dog learn new tricks.
You're not giving yourself enough credit. This is
No,
something
yeah.
all of us have. Technology is always a little iffy
Oh, and
for
you're
everybody.
you're in a field that contains so much technology.
And even we had a technical snag. So,
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so yeah, I guess in that case, I'll play some music. I'm just gonna do a small solo piece, and then from there, I'll tell you. I guess we can go to the periphery. Talk about periphery. Okay. Thank you.
Um, all right. So was that from your solo album?
No, I just
Improvised that.
improvised.
Yes.
But a lot of what's on that last record is about the moment, and so the only way to really do that properly is to just completely improvise and try to be as full in the present state as you can, and that was the whole point of that record. So this is in that same vein,
Yeah,
not the
it's a
exact
nice,
notes.
nice segue to what I wanted to talk about. Um, well, so I want to tell you a little bit about the last record that I did. As I say last record as if I've put out a lot of records. I haven't. That was my first record, my debut album. I've done a lot of collaborations and put out records with other artists, but this was the first time I put out something with my own music. Just it's Priya, and the album is called Periphery. About in 2019, Max, Dave, a cellist, Dave Agar, who's a brilliant cellist, and the three of us were performing at this fundraising concert somewhere, and it so happened, just like you read about in the stories. I mean, in storybooks almost. It sounds like a storybook story now, but there was a label manager, someone who owns a label in the audience, and comes up to me and tells me that he would love to sign me. That type of thing does not happen anymore. It used to happen 2 decades ago. So I got very lucky. And it also happened to be an incredibly respected record label called Chesky Records. And Chesky Records does something very special in that all of their records are basically live, and they record these albums live in a beautiful space because the architecture of the space plays a role
Generally,
in the recording itself.
like a vacant church.
Yes, and ours was recorded in a vacant church in Brooklyn, and using Chesky's brilliant recording technology. It's recorded in high definition, and they invent these incredible microphones and recording technology. They do binaural recording and things like that. So they came up to me and said they'd like to sign me, but the only thing is that they had 12 days, or by the time I finished, doing the contracts and decided to do it, we had 12 days for the recording itself.
12 days, no, 12 days in advance of the recording.
Yes, right. So we had 12 days to go for the recording. That was set. The recording date was set. It was going to happen at this church. And then
Wasn't the date like now? What was the date? Wasn't it like June 12th?
Yeah.
It was June 12th.
Yeah.
And on June 1st we signed.
Yes.
So they were like, you got 12 days to.
So we had
get your
12
material
days to
together.
write a record. And it was a very interesting situation for me, considering it was not a studio record where you have chances to do things over. You had to do we had to do a live record, which means normally most of their albums were cover songs or artists who were doing, just rearrangements of songs that already existed. But for some reason, I decided to write all new music. And it's just the extremist in me likes to put myself in these situations and see what happens. And so we wrote all of this music in 12 days. But the beauty of it was that we had all these structures, but we allowed for improvisational moments. because I knew that a live record requires that type of magic, and that's what they were hoping to capture, the magic of that moment. So we wrote a bunch of these songs, a couple of songs you heard, but we also left a lot of space for the magic of that moment. And sometimes, as you know, those moments could go terribly wrong or they could be very beautiful. And I just had to trust in that moment, had to trust in the artist, which was very easy because I had a brilliant set of musicians playing with me who I could depend on and, feel safe with and record. And this whole album was recorded live on one microphone. So there's just one microphone, and all the artists were, depending on the instruments we were playing, we were placed in different parts of the church. So we didn't even have headphones. We just had to really listen very clearly for each other. And the idea was also to communicate with the architecture of the space. So each of our instruments would respond to different parts of the church, of the architecture of the church in different ways. So I was also curious to see how I could use that in the recording itself. So there are moments in the record where I just get up and walk around while I'm singing, and you'll hear a bit of the creaking of the floor and things like that. But you'll also hear my voice changing and how it responds to different parts of the room. And that was the whole intention, to create almost something that you would typically in a studio recording you would do as a post-production thing. But here, since we weren't able to do any post-production, there was no editing, none of that was possible. It was going to be raw. We had to create all of it live. So in essence, I think this was sort of past meets like a very old school way, traditional way of recording, how they did in the olden days, but using the most advanced recording technology, but recording the present moment. So it was a very interesting thing that this whole album did with time, and I feel like the album sort of captures time in that way. And when you listen to it, if you do listen to it, please try and listen to it on headphones also if you can, because you can really hear the beautiful, fantastic quality of Chesky's recording and what we were all trying to do as artists in that recording.
So I guess, now's a perfect time. Can we, Barbara, can we do that YouTube link now and share the screen?
I was going to avoid that actually, but...
No, let's do it. Okay. And then unmute yourself, of course.
Barbara, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Barbara, you're muted.
Is it playing for all of you?
You're going to need to share your screen.
You'll have to share screen though.
Okay, maybe.
Here I found dreams that I never knew. Never.
Right, maybe.
I am here. Do you see me? Will I always be on the periphery? No matter where I go. So far away, away from home. 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 So far away, away from home.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay.
Oh, well, thanks for
Oh,
doing that. Well, that was a video. Thank you. That for my single home from the album Periphery, and I had the chance to produce it in Mumbai. We shot it in Borivali National Park, a park that I used to visit all the time growing up. And yeah, so it was my effort to marry another part of my life where I worked in film for many years and bring that aspect of me into my music as well. So yeah, if you can check it out later. I think there was a little bit of a lag, so please do if you can. So Periphery for me really opened up a lot. Again, musically, it sort of continues into the story I was telling you about, in me just finding my voice and finding who I am as an artist. And when this offer to record this album showed up, the only way to do something like this is to is to be 100% authentic. There's no way I can write a record in 12 days without being just being 100% authentic. And in at the time when I wrote this record, I was really going through a very I guess I still am, but I'm still like I've been questioning my identity. Who am I? Because ever since I moved here, it's always been, where are you from? What's your story? Where are you from? Everywhere I'd go, I'd get asked where I'm from. Um, and as time went by, I started to wonder, who am I? What is my cultural identity? And I started really missing home, but I didn't really know where home was anymore, because I'd go back to Mumbai. Everything has changed there. And there, people even back in India would be like, "Oh, but you're not from here anymore." And when I'm here, also, "Oh, but you're not from here. You're from there." And there, I'm not. From when I'm in India, I'm from here. So this whole, like you're not from anywhere type of feeling started to really, really play into how I was feeling for a long time. I was, and when one is trying, when I just move to a new country, I'm in a new culture. It's kind of very important to find some grounding, and I was so deeply looking for grounding and I couldn't find it. So I turned to music to express that, and that's where this album comes from. And it became something that I've been hearing such amazing feedback from people, where so many of us live on the periphery in different ways, culturally, in different forms of identity, and they told everyone, it's really beautiful to see how people now understand that it's okay to find your own little pocket, and that there are so many of us who live on the periphery in so many ways, and that could still be home for us. And in the process of writing and recording this album, I learned that home is actually just inside of me. And if I can find stillness and peace inside of me, no matter where I go, I would feel rooted. And that's what this album did for me. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Should we do one more?
Yes. So we want to play you one more piece, actually. We just realized it's almost 5 o'clock. So we'd love to play you another piece of music, and then maybe open this up to questions. Yeah? All right. So I want to actually start this piece. We had decided to do a whole different improvisational piece, but just now I felt that this moment was calling for a different different direction. So I want to actually play you something that my grandmother taught me as a child when I was growing up, and it's a really beautiful song, and it's based in Carnatic classical music, and I thought you'd enjoy that. And then we're gonna move into a Ravi Shankar piece, actually. So enjoy. That is not how the piece starts. That's just how Max sounds when he's tuning. Ha ha ha. குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை கண்ணா குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை கோவிந்தா குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை கண்ணா குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை கோவிந்தா கண்ணுக்கு தெரியாமல் நிற்கின்றாய் கண்ணா கண்ணுக்கு தெரியாமல் நின்றாலும் எனக்கு குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா கண்ணுக்கு தெரியாமல் நிற்கின்றாய் கண்ணா கண்ணுக்கு தெரியாமல் நின்றாலும் எனக்கு குறை ஒன்றும் இல்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா வேண்டியதை தந்திட வேண்டியதை தந்திட வெங்கடேசன் என்றிருக்க வேண்டியதை தந்திட வெங்கடேசன் என்றிருக்க வேண்டியது வேறில்லை வேண்டியது வேறில்லை வேண்டியது வேறில்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா மணிவண்ணா வேண்டியதை தந்திட வெங்கடேசன் என்றிருக்க வேண்டியது வேறில்லை மறைமூர்த்தி கண்ணா மணிவண்ணா மலையப்பா கோவிந்தா கோவிந்தா चोरी बैया ना मरोड़ो मोरी दूंगी दूंगी गाली हटो जाओ जी सावर सावरे 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 जाओ सावरे सावरे काहे मुझसे करो चोरा चोरी भैया ना मरोड़ो मोर दूंगी दूंगी गाड़ी हटो जाओ जी सावरे 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 संग न सहेली संग न सहेली भाग्य गेली संग न सहेली संग न सहेली भाग्य गेली संग न सहेली अब न जाते हैं मोरी शाम रुको न डगर मोरी सावरे 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 जाओ सावरे सावरे संग न सहेली संग न सहेली भाग्य गेली संग न सहेली संग न सहेली भाग्य गेली संग न सहेली अब न जाते हैं मोरे शाम रुको न डगर मोरे Well, thank you so much. That last piece was, it started with a song that my grandmother taught me. It was in Tamil. It's called Kure Bundramillai. Yeah, and it's actually in a bunch of different ragas. And it's a unique composition in the sense that it moves from one raga to another. And then it ended with a composition by Ravi Shankarji, which is written and sung by Lata Mangeshkar. And I had the audacity to try and do, my version of it. All right, so I'd like to open this to questions if you have any. Actually, before opening up to questions, I would like to say a quick little something about a couple of organizations that I work with that I'm on the board of. One of which is called International Wildlife Coexistence Network, and I'm on the board of this organization. It is an absolutely incredible organization, a first of its kind. We have some of the top conservationists and scientists from around the world on board, and we work in trying to offer coexistence solutions, especially in human-wildlife conflict areas. And we've partnered with several organizations, including the Wood River Wolf Project. We work with tigers in India. We're now working with snow leopards in India.
Jane Goodall.
Sorry?
And the Jane Goodall Institute.
Yeah, we work with Jane Goodall Institute, which is really I'm a big fan of Jane Goodall, and now she's one of our partners, which is really amazing. And we're currently working with trying to get Montana and Idaho to take back this crazy law that just put in about where they want to sort of kill 99% of the wolves that are there, and which is crazy because just 10 years ago, the wolves, conservationists did so much work in trying to bring back wolves because wolves were almost fully eradicated, and as we all know that wolves are very important for balance, and there are so many solutions. We are offering solutions that can actually mitigate this issue, where the sheep farmers do not have to be concerned about their issues, and there doesn't have to be a conflict, but somehow they prefer to use this very lethal method of solving a problem when there are non-lethal methods to solve these issues, and we're offering them these solutions. So if you do feel inclined towards wildlife issues and conservation issues, please check out this organization. It's called International Wildlife Coexistence Network. And we are currently raising funds for this particular effort so we can try and get more and more people involved and interested. And just this past week, Joe Biden got involved with our organization, and we're very excited that he's aware of the wolf issue. So we're very excited that we have his voice as well. We're really hoping that it can go somewhere from here. The other organization that I work with is something that I've worked with all my life. My formally since 2004. It's called Jana Rakshita, and we work in pediatric cancer, and we work with building educational facilities and infrastructure for the indigenous folks in India, especially the Adivasi and Dalit communities. And our focus is on trying to build infrastructure for Adivasi communities and Dalit communities and try and bring them safe education access. And our focus is also on trying to get more and more girls to have access to hygiene facilities, etc., so that they can come to school and feel safe about doing so.
Though now you've shifted a
Sorry?
lot. Now you've shifted a lot into the
COVID.
recent COVID situation.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past year, a lot of our work has actually changed because of COVID. Everybody is focused on that, but that doesn't mean that all these other issues have gone away. The education is still a big issue, especially more so now, because a lot of these kids in rural areas, they don't have access to, to computers or internet. And also pediatric cancer kids, a lot of our patients have lost both their parents to COVID. So we're trying to figure out how to find them a safe space where they can continue getting treatment and also have access to education while they do so. So our entire, our focus has sort of changed a little bit, but and it's more challenging than ever to try and get all this work done on the ground, especially when we're all just trying to work out from home. We're also in the process of trying to buy and donate an ambulance for a 24-hour free service for people who can't afford ambulance services. There's a lot of black market stuff going on where people are charging 5 times the price just to get people to hospitals. So we're trying to see if we can buy and donate an ambulance and just offer free services to people who can't afford it. So, and this organization is called Jana Rakshita, and I'll have Barbara send you all these links if that's okay, Barbara. And if you
all of those links, and I'm familiar with the wildlife, multiple organizations. So the future is in your hands, and they're very capable hands. So this is quite astonishing. And I can't believe the honor you've bestowed on our group. We had a private concert with the two of you, and that's just astonishing. So I thank you for doing this, and as you're memorable. And as I say, you are the future. Thank God.
Thank you. Thank you. It's our honor to be here and share this. This is what we do. We're playing music is something that we love doing, and especially when we have an audience that wants to listen, it's even more special and intentional. So thank you.
And I loved with Star where I picked up its country roots and then its Indian roots, two of my favorites.
Yes.
Nashville was definitely there.
Thank you. Yes.
Merle?
Well, I also want to thank you. I have heard both of you electronically through the marvels of Zoom and so forth. And I actually went to one of your live concerts in Evanston. And I'm very taken with the music and the multicultural, the global nature of it. but having the opportunity to hear a little bit more about your stories and how they inform the music has added a dimension, and I'm very, very grateful to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Penelope?
I too am grateful for the stories that both of you shared about how you came to where you are now, and they were profound. I want to share one short anecdote about Ella Fitzgerald, which is in 1964, I found myself at a concert that she was giving in the south of France in a very large venue. And we were in, I think, the second balcony, a long way back. And the sound system went completely out. No sound system, no mics, not at all. And she sang. She simply sang completely without mic for this huge theater. And we could hear it beautifully, and it was marvelous. So I just thought I'd share that with you to add to your, and as you see, it gave me goosebumps just remembering it. So it's
I live that moment with you right now because I mean it was
You just envision it.
I'm so glad you got to see her live. It's been a dream and I never got to see her live. So
well,
thank you for sharing that.
unplanned, unamplified.
That's
And
what
she still did it.
yes,
But I
her
also
that
wanted,
is her greatness.
yeah.
She could just be put in any situation and she would bring the
Yeah.
best.
And I wanted to ask you, Max, in your father's introduction, he said that you were, you built and designed or redesigning the hammered dulcimer. And I wondered if you could say something about that. I understand that the instrument itself has very wide distribution in the world.
Yeah,
And
there's about 15 styles of this hammered. A zither is basically a soundboard with a string stretched across it with a bridge in it, so it's a type of zither. But there's about 15 different versions of this instrument around the world. Probably the earliest form is likely a Persian form called santur, and the Indian form is also called santur. And then kind of from India, it went east and west. There's a Yangqin and the Kim in China and Thailand, respectively. There's one in Laos, one in Cambodia. Then the Cimbalam or Cimbale, Cimbal, in like Romania, Hungary, Czech Republic, that area. A lot of the Balkan stuff you can find it there. Santuri in Italy, in Greece, Salterio in Spain. There's about 15 different styles. Hackbrett in Germany, of the instrument around the world. The Germans and Irish brought their version of it to the Appalachian Mountains in the 1800s. And then it became known as an American folk instrument here. I can't hear you there, Penelope. Sorry.
Oh, I was just repeating 1800s. I'm sort of surprised it was that late, but
For this country, though,
how you redesigned it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the history of the instrument in this country, that's when it came here. But before that, I mean, it's been in Western Europe. It was around for probably 1,000 years. It's been there since the 1200s, maybe. And then in Persia, the earliest form of the instrument is about 3,000 years old. So there's about this 3,000-year-old tradition of this instrument winding its way to here. And it was much smaller of an instrument when it got here, and it kind of maintained that size and a lot of how it was built pretty much up until today. There's this builder, David Lindsay, in just north of Dallas in Oklahoma, who's pretty incredible. And what he kind of revolutionized this thing called a floating soundboard, which is the big soundboard that you're seeing here underneath the strings. It's floating. It's not attached. It's not glued down like every other version of the dulcimer, let alone every other version of the multicultural versions of the instrument. And so that gives the resonance the ability to really shine so much that it would sound, like still going, right? And I'm playing on the felted sides of my hammer, or if I play on the wooded side.
Wow.
Yeah, so that almost sounds like an organ, like this kind of this lush insanity, and so that's something that I got really attracted to, because oftentimes I found the instrument to be quite tinny, and kind of just this bright little, I mean, without putting judgment on it, like almost like a toy instrument. It just sounded like this little kind of like. I didn't find the strength. I didn't hear the power that could exist. I mean, you're literally hitting something. Like, why not have some strength behind that? So that was what attracted me to him as a builder. But because I am doing music outside of the standard tradition, at least in this country, I found myself breaking a lot of strings, breaking a lot of bridges, breaking a lot of hammers, having the instrument go out of tune a lot more. Also, just being in a more modern context, I'm more caring about the tuning, because I'm playing with other instruments. Oftentimes, if you're playing by yourself, you don't necessarily need to really be in tune that much, honestly, as long as you're in tune with yourself. Priya, the consummate Indian classical tuning is tantamount. That is the most important thing. She disagrees, but
what is music without tuning?
that's a very Indian classical background type of conversation. Her intonation is beautiful, but that is not a normal thing. And I was actually talking about this with some of these people down here in Bristol, that like they're marveling at her intonation, about how like it was always really on point, and how difficult it is, like Bobby, for it to sing in tune. But we were also talking about like
It's a style.
it's the stylization aspect and the emotional aspect that comes into singing that you find in folk music or the blues or different type of stuff here. You don't actually see as much in Indian classical music. There's emotional aspects to it in the singing, but that's not as much the point.
Folk music there as well.
I'm talking about it within the classical form. In the classical form, you don't really see emotion play as much of a part as it does here.
I completely
Priya
disagree.
disagrees. This can be a
Completely
long
disagree.
conversation.
This is a long conversation.
I'm sleeping on the couch. That's what that means.
Okay, keep it pro. This is a professional conversation, but yeah, no, emotion is in everything.
It's
even
there.
The raga itself is
Of course,
emotion.
the point of the raga is to emote a certain thing, but I'm talking about in the expression of the note. A lot of that is not as much of the purpose as much as it is. Sometimes you'll hear. I mean, listen to Dylan. I mean, that guy is not singing in tune. It's just not happening.
No.
But
For sure.
and it's all about the lyric. And look at Indian classical music; it's not all about the lyric, right? It's about the improvisation, as more so than the lyric. Except in South Indian music, it's different as well. But anyway, the point was that I was doing a lot of these different things that were making me realize I need to make something more effective for the style I'm playing. Let alone I want to have a better understanding of the instrument. And so we took the instrument apart and changed a lot of the pin blocks, changed a lot of the pins themselves, so it's a little bit wider so that it can stick a little stronger to the 17-ply pin block, and some bracing on the inside as well, but not having it touch the soundboard, and all these different things to allow for tuning stability. That's kind of tuning stability is probably the main thing that I focused on when dealing with modifications to the instrument. I tried a whole lot of other things, most of which failed. And the problem with trying to modify something, if you're the only one really doing it, it takes a long time. And with guitars, for example, there's 10,000 people trying to make a guitar better even now, let alone through history. But dulcimer, really, you haven't had that type of history, and so for me to do it, that basically would be no more performance career, no more recording career. I'm focused on this now, and it's not what I wanted to do. So I'm going slow, starting really with tuning stability, and then of course I've changed a lot of the tuning on the instrument itself to allow for more of a chromatic movement. Yeah, that's that.
We're also trying to make it lighter.
Oh, the lighter thing's not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
No, I was hoping to have the instrument be lighter. It's about 40 pounds without the case, which is...
I should tell you that Max's first CD was titled Too Heavy to Carry.
I was probably like
Lighter than the
50% heavier than the instrument at the time. I think I was like 70 pounds. So like...
Totally. Max, You mentioned being in Senegal and studying that music. I was there in 69
Oof.
and would love just a few bars to hear the sound you picked up there. Is it
Was
anything?
69 before, was that before independence?
No, everything was independent.
No, I mean, there was stuff that, even up until the 70s, Gambia, I think,
I
was
mean,
72.
I,
Anyway, yeah, we can get into that later. But yeah, I'd be happy to play
because
something.
I would like a feeling of that time.
I like to give this. I wrote a piece out there that has a very Senegalese feel, and it incorporates a lot of the compositional techniques of Senegalese music, where you'll take a very basic structure and then expand it and expand it and expand it and kind of improvise on it. It's actually quite similar to raga in a certain sense, but I feel like it's more vertical than horizontal, where it's all about stacking small things on top of each other while still improvising, but around a structure. The structure, though, is a lot smaller than you would find in raga in Indian classical music. It's much smaller of a structure, but it's stacked as opposed to a much longer structure that's like on a horizontal plane. So that's kind of like to think about the differences. But yeah, I'd be happy to do something here. This one is here you go. So like you'll start with this as the structure. Yeah. So this you kind of have to do something different before you kind of lose your mind.
Thank you.
Next is quick question. Is that traditional Senegalese or is that your riff on it?
Yeah, this is my piece, but based around the concept of taking this. Well, it's complicated actually. Yes and no, because this is an old structure called jiggy, and that's the raga, if you will. That's the structure, and that's it. And this is where you start to. Can you hear that musically as well? I'm not sure if you can hear that. Yeah. So this is where you start to then add that harmony. pickup, some subdivisions. What's funny is, I'm doing, once I get the full, once the piece kind of expands, it becomes this fuller thing. This structure is still there the whole time, even though I'm not playing it. And that's what is I find very, very similar to raga, where even though you have these rules that you have to know and incorporate into the piece, you're not actually playing those rules. Like if I would just continuously play this one, the actual rule of the raga, it would get quite boring. I mean, if every single time that you were just doing the scale ascending and scale descending as your presentation of the raga, that would be it. It's not the point. It wouldn't be, even though it's technically correct, it would just be super boring. So that's kind of my version of it, but it's just one of a infinite amount of versions.
So it's the structure.
Yeah.
Soma, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. That was lovely. I had never heard of that instrument, although when I heard the sound, it seemed so familiar. Like I imagine hearing this sound. It reminded me of the movie Silsila, like the background music to some of it.
You know why it reminded you of Silsila? Because it is Shivkumar Sharma ji and Hari Prasad Chaurasia.
Is that
They
right?
composed the music for Silsila. And it was I think the only movie Shivkumar Sharma did, right? Or he did a bunch?
He did.
Okay, but that was Silsila was like one of his
big ones.
Big ones. And that's his
my
guru
favorite soundtrack.
Fantastic. So, because I'm musically illiterate, but what I thought was very sweet that Barbara asked about the Senegalese music, it just made me think, no wonder you're called House of Water, because the sound reminded me of tinkling water, like sparkling water running down waterfalls. It just, maybe it's the Hindi movies I've seen, just what I remember of. But, and it's so appropriate. It's called Dulce. What is it? Hammer Dulcimer?
Yeah, like Dulce.
Yeah, like Dulce.
Like Dulce, it's sweet. It's really
yes,
sweet.
it's.
And Mare is actually the Greek word for sound. So
it's sweet sound. Yeah.
It lives up to the name. So what I wanted to share with you is your interest in wildlife, which is lovely. We share similar interest, and like Penelope, I'm a huge Ella Fitzgerald fan. When she sings Cole Porter songs, just about pitch perfect. But my suggestion for you is, since you're doing work, especially about wolves, you probably know this. There's a pianist, Helene Grimaud, right? Is that how you pronounce her name? Hélène Grimaud. She's a concert pianist. I think Barenbaum introduced her. She's as much invested in wolf conservation in New York. You might want to look her up. I think she performed just so she can take care of the wolves. Helene, last name Grimaud. She's been doing this for years.
Can you spell her last name again? Grimaude.
She has a conservation set up already. She's devoted to it. So she's wonderful in this work. So she
that
might.
Is amazing. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
This was really a wonderful concert. Alan, you must be beaming. It was lovely. Thank you for all the music.
Excuse me, I just have to say thank you very much. It was really beautiful and echoes Shoma's sentiments, Alan. And
so
I have to go. I'm so sorry.
Of course. Thank you so much. It's lovely meeting all
I
of
have to
you.
give a directions, but it was so much fun. I absolutely love this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
My internet is becoming unstable. If you'll get me your organizations, I will certainly send that forth, because I love it. I'm just so thrilled, because many of us have been at this for years and years, and it's important to know that it will be continued.
It most definitely will. Yes.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful.
Oh my God, what an honor you have given us. Thank you.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
We'll send Barbie. We'll send you a whole list of our links with our websites.
Yes,
and
please, and then I'll
everything.
forward all of those.
Great.
Thank you. All right.
All
right.
Peace and love.
Thank you.
Much love to everyone. Bye.